Dante's Paradiso Cantos 12 through 22. So here's again the overall picture of Dante's universe. You have the earth in the middle here, hell, purgatory, the Mount Purgatory rising up towards heaven, the Garden of Eden at the top, and then the planets, the moon, Mercury, Venus, the sun, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, the stars, and then the Empyrean, where God is. Canto 12, the Sun, the sphere 4 of heaven, St. Bonaventure and St. Dominic. So to repay Thomas Aquinas' compliment, St. Bonaventure, a Franciscan who wrote the life of St. Francis and also worked against extremism in the Franciscan order, tells the story of St. Dominic, who founded the Dominican order. So Thomas Aquinas had told the story of St. Francis, who founded the Franciscan order, even though he was a Dominican. And St. Bonaventure, who was a Franciscan and a follower of St. Francis, tells the story of St. Dominic, the founder of the. So this again shows that in heaven, these two orders are not competing against each other, but they love each other. Just the opposite of hell, where everybody hated each other. So St. Dominic here's St. Bonaventure. He was a Franciscan, and he's going to tell the life of St. Dominic. St. Dominic was the founder of the Dominican order, or what it's actually called is the Order of Preachers, or sometimes called the Black Friars, to which Thomas Aquinas belonged. The Franciscans and the Dominicans were the two orders that changed the face of Catholicism in Italy in the 13th century, so just before Dante's time. They were kind of revolutionary movements, right? The Franciscans focusing on a life of poverty and following Christ very closely, and the order of St. Dominic focusing on preaching the gospel. Both of them were what were called the mendicant orders. In other words, they rejected the existing monastic system at their time, which was basically where you would have a walled-in community where you would live in isolation from the world. But instead, they live a life in the world. In the Dominicans' case, traveling and preaching and converting heretics, and the Franciscans preached also, and both of them living lives of poverty. So the story of St. Dominic emphasizes his vigor, his service to the cause of truth, and his zeal, a different but complementary character to St. Francis's love and humility. Dominic fought against the Albigensian heresy. He introduces a ring of 12 bright spirits in this level of heaven, as St. Thomas had also done in Canto 11. And they include, so these are other people that are on the same level with the same level of heaven here of the sun with St. Bonaventure. They include Joachim Fiore, a Franciscan prophet, St. John Chrysostom, who's a great preacher, Nathan the prophet, who denounced David's sins. So Joachim on the top here was a radical Franciscan prophet who had prophesied the third age of the church, the age of the Holy Spirit, but whose movement was later suppressed by the church. So Bonaventure ends by criticizing the modern errors of his fellow Franciscans. including those who are too strict and those who relax the disciplines of religious life too much. Notice that the two competing orders in the church, the Franciscans and the Dominicans, love each other and they complement each other in heaven. Canto 13, King Solomon, and the imperfection of men. Dante sees the 24 bright spirits in two rings round each other do a circle dance. Dante here emphasizes how far beyond earthly comprehension the joy and splendor of heaven is. Thomas Aquinas had earlier referred to King Solomon as being granted a vision of no equal, but he detects that Dante is puzzled by this claim. Aquinas explains how all creation is varied and imperfect because of the way it is made of matter that is filtered down from the higher spheres. The only exceptions are Christ and Adam, who were created directly by God and are therefore perfect. Aquinas explains rather pedantically that he meant that Solomon had his vision granted rather than that his vision was inherent to his creation. Everyone is granted certain talents by God at their creation, but many people waste or hide their talents. Solomon used his talents for the good of his nation. He was a good ruler. And he follows up with Thomas Aquinas then follows up with a warning about rushing to hasty conclusions. Canto 14. Solomon, the fiery cross, and Mars. So Solomon explains to Dante that humans need both their bodies and their souls to be whole. When on Judgment Day the souls are reunited with their bodies, this will increase their joy and splendor, and their faculties will be strong enough not to be dazzled by each other's light, as Dante's mortal eyes currently are. Then Beatrice and Dante ascend to the fifth sphere, Mars, where they see souls forming the shape of a fiery cross. This is the level of the warrior saints. Mars was the Roman god of war, and so this is the level for warrior saints, or we might say crusaders. And again, here's a picture of the heavens. We're on the fifth planet out here, which is Mars, just past the sun. They came up from the sun where they met Thomas Aquinas and Bonaventure. Now they've gone to Mars, which is for the crusaders or the warrior saints. So you can see the sun was for the wise and prudent. Mars is for warriors who have fortitude. And the next level past that is Jupiter, which is for wise rulers, those who embrace justice. At the end of Canto 14, Dante looks into Beatrice's eyes, whose holy beauty becomes more pure as they rise higher into the heavens. Canto 15, Mars, the fifth sphere of heaven for warrior saints. And they meet Dante's ancestor, Cacciaguida. The fiery cross is made up of warrior saints in the Martian sky. One of the souls approaches like a meteor and reveals himself to be Dante's great-great-grandfather, Cacciaguida. Cacciaguida tells Dante about the ideal Florence of his day. Back in the old days when Florence used to be a good city and didn't have all these problems with Guelphs and Ghibellines. It had modesty and virtue, contrasting with the moral ruin of Florence in the year 1300 when Dante has this vision. The sphere of Mars is for warrior saints, and Cacciaguida tells about how he was martyred while on the crusade to the Holy Land with the Emperor Conrad III during the Second Crusade. Canto 16. Cacciaguida Alighieri, the decline of Florence through immigration. Dante cannot resist feeling proud of his ancestor, even though he acknowledges that family greatness can quickly decline. Cacciaguida says that most of Florence's problems stem from the influx of new citizens from nearby villages as Florence's population swelled, so that the population became an unhealthy mixture and the city became characterized by a new vulgarity. So in other words, in his day, the Florentines were good, virtuous people, but then all these outsiders came in who were a bunch of crooks and corrupted the city. Then Cacciaguida lists the great Florentine families of his day, many of whom have indeed declined or brought evil upon Dante's Florence. Canto 17. So, Cacciaguida prophesies Dante's future. Dante asks what his future holds. Cacciaguida starts by summarizing Boethius' teaching about predestination, free will, and eternity. The fact that he and God know something will happen is not because it is predestined to happen in a way that destroys man's free will. Instead, it is just a matter of perspective. God and the saints see things from outside of time, from an eternal perspective. So they see the past, the present, and the future all at once. They know what will happen, but they don't therefore cause men to make bad choices. Men still have free will. Cacciaguida tells Dante about his future exile from Florence and the hardships that will come with it. And he tells Dante he will find refuge with the Della Scala family in Verona, and that Can Grande Della Scala will become a great hero for the cause of good in Italy. Dante's prophetic mission is to write about his journey and deliver its truths to his contemporaries. It is emphasized here. Canto 18. Cross of spirits on Mars and ascending to Jupiter, the sixth sphere for just rulers. So Dante becomes totally absorbed in Beatrice's eyes again. She gently rebukes him and says, "Not only in my eyes is paradise." This is like courtly love, but it has been transfigured to a holy love. Beatrice represents divine philosophy, very much like lady philosophy from Boethius, who Dante had read and was heavily influenced by. And she is saying that there are two good paths of religion, philosophy and the church militant, or it could be rephrased as the contemplative life and the active life. And by the way, the planets they've been on, the Sun, Mars, and the one they're going to, Jupiter, is for the active life. And beyond that, at Saturn, is the contemplative life. So she is saying the warrior saints like Cacciaguida have something to teach us. Cacciaguida points out prominent warrior saints among the spirits making up the cross. These include Charlemagne, the emperor, Roland, from the Song of Roland, Joshua, who led the Israelites against Jericho, Godfrey of Boulogne, who led the First Crusade, and Judas Maccabeus, who helped the Jews fight against the Greeks who were invading the Holy Land. Then Beatrice and Dante ascend to the sixth sphere, Jupiter, for just rulers. The spirits up here are collectively forming letters that spell in Latin, love justice, ye that judge the earth, which is from Solomon's Book of Wisdom. Then they gather together to make the shape of an eagle. Which is a representation of the Roman Empire, with lilies entwined beneath it, perhaps France, symbolizing France. Dante asks God to be angry at the corruption of Pope Boniface, who is in charge of Christ's church but is corrupting it. Okay, so they've moved up to the sixth level of heaven, which is Jupiter, which is for good rulers. So, speaking with the eagle on Jupiter, salvation for those following Christ, Canto 19. The eagle speaks to Dante as a single unity, even though it is composed of all the souls of just kings. So, before we go to that, I just want to point out Jupiter is the largest planet in Roman mythology. Jupiter is the king of the gods, and it represents justice and wisdom. And it kind of fits because if it represents the king of the gods in Roman mythology, this is the level of heaven that is for kings, for good kings. So they form the shape of an eagle, and the eagle speaks to Dante as a single unity, even though it is composed of all the souls of the just kings. Justice which kings carry out, is a single divine concept which subsumes them all. It says that only those who believe in Christ can enter paradise. Before Christ's coming in the Old Testament, some who were guided to expect his coming are also saved by him. Dante asks why it is that the virtuous non-Christians can deserve to be cut off from God's love in the afterlife. The eagle responds that Dante must trust divine justice, even when its workings are beyond comprehension. It is the only true standard of justice, and it cannot be faulty. Then the eagle says that there are many Christian rulers and Christians who are worse than pagans, revealed by the way they conduct their lives. It condemns injustice under Europe's current rulers, and he gives a whole list of evil Christian kings of different European countries. The just pagans will find themselves closer to Christ at the Last Judgment than some of these evil, quote-unquote, Christians, who are hypocrites. Canto 20. The Eagle, Great Rulers and the Story of Trajan's Conversion. The eagle speaks with one voice. The eagle says that the souls that comprise its eye, the eye of the eagle, are the best rulers of all. They are Hezekiah, Constantine, the emperor, in spite of his mistake of moving the capital of the empire to Constantinople from Rome, and the donation of Constantine, which ended up corrupting the church. King David, King William the Good, the Emperor Trajan, and a Trojan called Ripheus. The eagle explains that the Roman Emperor Trajan was a virtuous pagan who died and went to hell, but was brought back to life through the prayers of Pope Gregory and converted to Christianity. Meanwhile, Ripheus, who was from ancient Troy, 1,000 years before Christ, was such a worthy man that by divine grace he perceived the coming redemption of humanity through Christ and became a Christian 1,000 years early. Dante then celebrates the three theological virtues, faith, hope, and love, and says we should not try to judge who is saved or not, but trust in God to determine that. And the souls of the just, as they move up to higher levels in heaven, they become more resplendent, more bright at each level. Okay, we're going to move on to Canto 21, which is the seventh sphere of heaven for the contemplatives. So the three previous spheres before Saturn had been for, which would be the Sun, Mars, and Jupiter, were for those who lived the active Christian life. Preachers, teachers, crusaders, and just rulers. Dante and Beatrice now ascend to the seventh sphere, which houses Saturn and the contemplatives, those who lived a contemplative religious life. In this sphere, souls go up and down a golden ladder. They are getting closer to God. Here's the golden ladder. They are getting close to God. Here, Beatrice does not smile, and the souls do not sing. They are silent, as monks are in a monastery, because the radiant power and beauty of them would be too much for Dante's faculties to handle. Dante gazes fixedly at Beatrice, and every other thought leaves his mind, but she doesn't smile on this level, because if she did, it would basically kill Dante. And this is also why the people on this level don't sing or really speak at all. They're silent. So he meets Peter Damian here, Peter the Sinner, who was a monk and an ardent reformer of the church in the 11th century. He comes to converse with Dante and to criticize the corruption of the modern church. Then a great condemnation from the other spirits on this level overwhelms Dante's senses. Beatrice reassures Dante, and we move on to Canto 22, where he speaks to Saint Benedict, the founder of the Benedictine order. So this is the person that started the monasticism. And the idea of monasticism is monks living together in a community completely separate from the world. So they're different from the Franciscans and the Dominicans, who live in the world and live an active life of preaching and care for the poor. Dante asks to see his face unveiled by the splendor of its dazzling lights, and Benedict says that this will only be possible in the Empyrean, the true heaven. Benedict rails against the degeneracy of the monks in Dante's day. Beatrice encourages Dante to climb the great stairway, which is kind of like Jacob's ladder in the Bible. This is the golden stairway he saw earlier. To the next level, which is level 8, the stellar heaven, or the heaven of stars, and then to look down on the earth, which seems tiny and insignificant far below.